Pelicans shot 54%, scored 54 points, and lead the Grizzlies 54-50. 10 of those points coming from Julius Randle as the Pels play without Anthony Davis, but lead it by 4. Part of an 11-game MLK Day around the NBA, and it's the American Express halftime report. Ernie Johnson, Shaquille O'Neal, Charles Barkley, Kenny the Jet Smith, and our special guest here for our halftime report is Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA. It's good to see you, as always.
Thanks for having me.
Let me join in with that. Okay. What does this day mean for you? What feeling do you get? And I know you were in the arena in Atlanta today to watch some Magic and the Hawks, but the way the league embraces this day?
It's always been a special day, as you guys know. In the NBA, we have 11 games today. But not just that, all 30 teams activate around MLK Day in their communities. We have everything from clinics to tournaments to essay contests, museum visits, social activities around junior NBA in the communities. And you know, I think what Dr. King's message embodies, I think, so much what this league is about. And I always love that through line. You and I have talked about this in the past, that Bill Russell stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in August 1963 when that very I Have a Dream speech was delivered. And it's wonderful to walk out, you know, as you said, I was over at the State Farm Arena for the Hawks game to see the players on their shooting shirts, you know, and it says Dream on the front, and then the back of the shirts have the first few lines from the actual speech.
Yeah. And how important has it been for you as you look at players being socially aware, players not being afraid to speak out, and continuing that thread from Bill Russell?
I think it's critically important, and what I always point out is that began long before me. It was part of these guys' generation when they were on the floor. It was part of Bill Russell. It was part of Bob Cousy. It was part of even players that came before them. And I think even more so now with all that's going on in our country and globally, with 25% of our players coming from outside the United States, I always feel it's part of Americana that we export to the world. Those uniquely American values, that First Amendment, that freedom of speech. And I think I'm thrilled at the fact that players in this league are comfortable speaking out on issues that are important to them. And as I say, I think, and these guys know, it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
You know, it's for those players. I'm not saying you should be speaking on political matters if you're not comfortable doing that. But if you are, and by the way, I also think it's great that they engage on all kinds of activities in society. They talk about music, they talk about fashion. I mean, they have this platform to show people they're truly multidimensional. They're not just ball players.
You know, Commissioner, you look at the last election, see how many women were elected to Congress. The NBA's made some inroads as far as hiring women. When do you think
Kamala Harris announcing today?
Yes.
Presidency?
Remember, she was at our All-Star game in LA speaking. Yeah.
Yep.
Remember when I was asking a question?
Well, you can finish it.
Okay.
We just have a moment.
I apologize.
You know, we see a lot of NBA teams hiring women. Obviously, Becky down in San Antonio. When do you think we're going to get to the point where we have a woman who actually in control of a team as a general manager or a coach?
Well, I'll begin. We actually have 2 women who have control of a team right now. You have Gail Benson in New Orleans, and you of course have Jeannie Buss in Los Angeles. So you actually have 2 women who have full control over franchises. I think, to your point, in terms of general managers, it's happening, and it's going to be an evolution, or it will continue to evolve in this league. You have more and more women, as you guys have pointed out, working in front offices in the league, and I think it's an area where, as much credit as we get for being ahead in certain areas, I acknowledge we're behind. I mean, in positions, whether it's refereeing, whether it's coaching, whether it's being a general manager, there's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't have more women in those jobs. I think it's been part of the history of Major League sports, and we were allowed, I think, to, on one hand, do incredible things in communities and represent those principles that Dr. King talked about. But then when it came to women in front office positions, somehow it just wasn't part of the culture of that league. And I think that's something we're all working to change very quickly.
I don't have a question, but I would like to take this time to commend you. You know, we all played under the great David Stern. I know he was your mentor for many years, but ever since you have taken control of the ship, you've always done the right thing, whether it comes socially or politically. So I just want to take this time personally to say thank you for doing a wonderful job and, you know, letting the players be who they are rather than, you know, having control. You're doing a great job. I appreciate it.
I'll echo that.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I'll echo that and kind of piggyback off of that, because mine is more of a commentary as well as a question that you could kind of fill in on. I just always felt that on Martin Luther King Day, we talk about civil rights being, you know, in the 60s, it was really about the simplicities, civil rights. simple things that mattered. You know, not being judged by the color of your skin. Simple thought process that was not simple. Then I think we moved into a complexity of like being business and business owners. And then realizing now that we are back to the simplicities about civil rights, about police brutality, possibly, and all of the things that go on now. And as a league, how are we embracing the simplicities and how are we embracing the complexities because they're happening at the same time?
It's a great point, and I think first principles go to human rights. And I think that's something we're increasingly talking about in this league. And whether it's African Americans, whether it's women, whether it's the LGBT community, that we focused on in North Carolina, I think it's, again, when you look back at the values that were created around from the early days of this league, again, from Bill Russell standing there with Dr. King, I think that those values, while they're simple principles, in real life they are complex. And I realize that we live in a divided society, and by no means, I think as a league, should we be necessarily lecturing people. We have to listen to other people's points of views. I think that's important, and look for opportunities to bring people together. I mean, one of the things that the Hawks right down the street talk about is building bridges through basketball. And I think I think it's very important that while we point out when we see injustice, that again, it's not the league saying necessarily that we're here to lecture you and tell you the right way to do things. I do think we have to listen and again find commonality through sports. That's what's so incredible. I mean, all of us travel the world with this game. You guys, and I just got back from Europe last week. I was in Africa over the summer. I was in China in October. And these are universal human values. And what's so special about sports, and I think maybe is unique to basketball because we're a global sport, we can use this as a platform to bring people together.
They want to take a break, but we're not taking a break. So listen, are you concerned about the poaching aspect of the NBA with the super teams now? The chatter's already started on Kawhi Leonard, where he's going next year from a smaller market. You got Anthony Davis, same situation. It's going to start next year with Giannis. Are you concerned about the big picture of that in the NBA, just having one or two super teams, and we're just going to keep poaching superstars from smaller markets?
I'm absolutely concerned. I think then the issue is how can we address it? I mean, we, as a policy matter, when players are talking to players, and you guys can speak to this, I think it would be pointless to try to police what one player is saying to another. I think players are going to have their own conversations. And the reason a different rule applies to players and teams is that players don't have control. The teams do. On the other hand, that if we thought that teams were working in unison with players to try to recruit other players, that would be a problem. But in the day and age of social media, I recognize part of the appeal of this league is that it's 24/7, that people love the chatter, they love the narratives around teams, they love the narratives around players moving, and it's part of this community that people are endlessly going to talk about those things. I think what's most important, I think we're also seeing in the league, despite that kind of chatter, that there's been an equalization among franchises in that it doesn't really matter what market you're in anymore. That you can be a global star, whether you're in Oklahoma City or whether you're in Los Angeles or whether you're in Indiana. What matters is how the team performs. So I think that counters that narrative to a certain extent. And there may be things we have to look at when we sit down with the players again, because the players all want to be in a league where everybody has an opportunity to win too. So I am concerned, but I think it's something that we can solve, but we got to continue to talk about it.
Commissioner, we would love to have you back another time where we can have even more time to talk about things on the floor. But thank you very much for joining us on this.
Thanks, Ernie. Thanks to all of you.
Yes,
Call it a
thank
day
you.
with the commish.
Martin Luther King was definitely a pioneer of his time to use his voice to what he believed in.
He energized groups to carry the message. It wasn't all about him, and he did it in such a loving way that it's impossible not to follow that example.
I think the way that he used his voice and his platform, no matter if it was in the eyes of ridicule or imprisonment or whatever the case was, he didn't back down from that. And so for us, it's inspiration to use our voice and our platform to speak for those that can't speak for themselves.
Very special MLK Day around the association. Our Auto Trader pregame shows you Game 1, PG-13. Forget just all defense MVP conversation. He has been as good as it gets. Thunder get the Knicks. Hawks looking for some magic. A lot of youth take center stage. Not on this stage. At least not to my left. Hawks and Magic, we'll get to that as well. We got 11. Great laugh, Mac. Clearly, perspective. Today is about much more than basketball as we celebrate the great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And you think about, and I say this with Jackie Robinson Day in baseball, having covered it, where everybody sits there April 15th every year wearing 42. We recognize this day. We should appreciate and believe in the message every single day as we bring you in to our set, Arbitrary Pregame. Casey Stern, my Hall of Famers, Zeke, Mac. Isaiah, when you sit there and you think about the importance of passing on the message to young athletes and young African-American athletes who are sitting there who may not truly understand the appreciation they should have of what this day means, how important is it for you that basketball takes center stage in that relationship on MLK Day?
I think it's extremely important that basketball and sport, represent this day because, when you come together in sport, there's really no race, there's no religion, there's no culture. It's just really about people coming together, loving each other, and trying to win or trying to accomplish a goal. What Martin Luther King stood for and what he was trying to do was to make us all equal in the eyes of the law. So there's a great history lesson here in terms of being equal under the eyes of the law, fighting for justice, fighting for equality, fighting for, equal rights in terms of the Voting Rights Act. We grew up in the 60s, played in the 70s, and I'll let Kevin, speak to how important the Celtics were during this period of time and what Red Auerbach did with Bill Russell. But I mean, when you talk about the history of sport and you talk about the history of this day, we always see that iconic picture of Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. What does that picture stand for? It stands for people fighting for equality, but using the law, using protests, using marches, but understanding how the law works in this country and then trying to change those laws, trying to abide by the U.S. Constitution, trying to be a part of the Constitution, trying to be a part of the fabric of America. That's what MLK was all about, and that's what MLK Day represents.
Mac, Zeke references that you think about the Boston Celtics and Red Auerbach, and there are names like his and Branch Rickey in baseball and others who have been so instrumental in this. And I love something we were talking earlier, there's no white, there's no black, only green. Yeah. And the common denominator that sports not only presents in general, but how much of that in this league really began with the organization that you played for. How much of that did you feel? Give us a sense of what that was like being a part of it.
Very much. I mean, red, yeah, there's no black or white, there's green, because the more we win, the more money we're going to make, and we're all going to make it together, and, we all do better together. Basketball is an unbelievable unifier of people. I grew up in a small little mining town. I didn't know any black guys growing up. I went down to the University of Minnesota, and I had no preconceived notions of anybody. I went down there, and some of the black guys on my team became way better friends than some of the white guys. And so I never looked at people from color. And like you say, when you're on the floor, you're just out there playing. The ball has no idea what color you are. Yeah. You're just moving and stuff. And taking it back to the Celtics, Red felt like that. Red started 5 black players, first guy to do that. Yeah. He gave the head coaching job to Bill Russell. So Bill Russell was the first player coach, black.
I think it's important that you cite the date. I think Martin Luther King was assassinated in 68. Russell became player head coach, 69.
Yeah, I mean, but
that's how important the Celtics were.
Yeah, and that was a wild time. Zeke and I grew up in the 60s, in the 70s, played in the 70s in college, and played in the pros in the 80s. But it felt like I grew up in a completely different world than today. I mean, I did not see a lot of color and a lot of stuff. Never dawned on me that you were different than me because of your skin color. It was honestly who you were as a person. I liked good people. I liked people that were fun. I liked people like to laugh and stuff like that. So I had universal. Didn't matter what skin color you were. And now I see, it feels like we're almost taking a giant step back, and you put everybody in their little categories. People are people. And I just think basketball is a great uniter. I think it brings people together. And I know, again, taking it back to the Celtics, that was a family. Quick story I'll tell you. So I'm a rookie. They bring everybody back, and they bring back the 1960 World Championship team. This is the first time I see Bill Russell. I love Bill Russell. So I'm in the court, and Bill Russell walks out. I'm like, ooh, Bill Russell, I'm standing out here on the court with Bill Russell. I'm excited. Red comes out. Russ gives him a hug, picks him up in the air, and I'm just staring at him. I'm thinking, wow, the love that these two guys had for each other, and the mutual respect and love and everything they had. It was just so genuine. And I just watched that and said, man, these guys went through some stuff together, and they came out the other side. And you talked about, common goals. The bigger your goals are, the tighter you become. Because if your goal is just get paid in the NBA, who cares if you win? Yeah. Your team can be scattered and sketchy. If your goal is to win an NBA championship, you got to be tight, and you got to care about each other. And you can see those guys cared about each other.
All the way at the lowest of levels in terms of those out of the NBA, the community, and spreading the message, something that we continue to see this year to celebrate the life of Dr. King. Visited schools and youth programs around the country that are associated with NBA teams and players. Wanted to hear from the next generation of the leaders and their thoughts about civil rights, modern-day activism, and, of course, the legacy of MLK. Zeke, along with Memphis Grizzlies point guard Mike Conley, sat down with 5 students from Grizzlies Prep to have that discussion and to visit the site where Dr. King took his very last breath.
Forwards.
That's just a snippet of a feature you can see in its entirety tonight, 5 p.m., or this afternoon, I guess, 5 p.m. Eastern on the TNT pregame. Zeke, what did it mean to you? What do those types of conversations mean to you?
I was impressed, but I was also hurt that we are still dealing with some of the same issues and topics that we were dealing with in the 40s, 50s, 60s, basically since the inception of this country. And to have those young men at such a young age have to come face to face with, they just want to be equal and they want the same opportunities. And, for the one kid to say, that Martin Luther King was a man, and, we visited, the sanitation workers site where when Martin Luther King went down to Memphis, it was about I am a man, because the workers and African Americans at that time were not being treated or seen as men. And for this young man to say, hey, he just wanted to grow up and be a man and to have, the full equal rights under the law, protection, citizenship, so forth and so on. It was very enlightening, but very disheartening to see that we're still going through this.
Well, you mentioned a young age. We stay with the Grizzlies. Jaren Jackson Jr., he's been celebrating MLK Day since he was a young boy. The Grizzlies and the Pels get together today as part of our broadcast. He'll be doing what he normally does, that's playing basketball. Why don't you see what he was doing when he was 6 years old? Take a look.
We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day the Red Hills of Georgia, the Southern Florida Saints, and the Southern Florida Saints will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood.